I'm Billy. And welcome to Jack of Trades. In the previous video, we have covered the basic implementation of Livewire event listeners by wrapping our form elements with a bootstrap modal component. If you're still new here, you can check out the previous videos. I'm going to put the link in the description below. I will also be adding bonus videos later on that I think would be essential for you to learn. This series of videos aims to get you started faster in implementing solutions in a real-world situation on your web development journey. And without further ado, let's get into it. The next thing we want to do is to implement a modal pop-up window that will serve as a confirmation box for the users if they wanted to delete a specific post. So let's go to the getbootstrap.com again and copy the implementation for their modal. And let's add it in our Livewire Blade template posts. Let's change the modal's HTML element ID and a much more descriptive name. We need to do this because we will add an extra JavaScript event listeners to handle our modal components show and hide feature. Let's then add a little bit of a text for our pop-up modal for delete. And let's change these buttons right here. Later on, we will add a wire click event on this button we labeled as the yes button. We're going to change things up a bit here. What we wanted to do is to get the currently selected ID of the post item. To do that, we will create a function inside our parent component, the post class file, that will capture which specific post you have selected in our user interface. We will call this function selectItem, and we are going to pass in two parameters, the item ID and action. Let's kind of test out what this approach is all about. So, what we're going to do is, when we click the delete button, we display the selected item ID and the action type we are currently capturing. Let's go to the front end, and replace the delete function we are triggering on the wire click to select item function. And while we are at it, let's also add another button, the update button. We should be able to fire the function select item from the back end with this setup. Let's echo these two variables out on the front end, and we'll see what happens. As you can see, when I click either the delete or the update button, we can capture the post ID and what type of action we want to choose. Now, let's go back to our app.blade.php and add more JavaScript event listeners just like we did last time. We already have two modals hidden in our front end. The first modal component is the one we wrapped our form elements into, and the second one is the modal component for our delete pop-up. We will add 3 more JavaScript event listeners that will handle for the show and hide features for both modal components. Now that we added all the JavaScript event listeners, let's change our code to fulfill what we are planning to achieve here. First, let's work on the delete part. Let's put an if condition statement that will capture the user's action when the user clicks any of the delete button from the front end. We will dispatch one of the JavaScript event listeners we put in a while ago in our app.blade.php, which is the open delete modal. And let's also update the delete function here. Instead of getting the ID from the function parameter itself, we will pass our public variable selected item into the post destroy function. Now, let's put a wire click in the yes button of the delete modal component we added a while ago. Let's test it up. We forgot to dispatch another JavaScript event when we delete the item. That's why the modal does not disappear as we proceed to delete the post item. So, let's add it to our delete function as well. As you can see, we can make the pop-up window disappear after we click the button. That's how easy it is to implement that kind of stuff in Livewire. Now, to complete our goal for this Laravel Livewire series, we will reuse the form element we used for creating our post to our update functionality. In our select item function, we will add another condition to our code. This time, we will dispatch the modal for our form elements to show on the screen. Remember, we already captured the selected ID for our post, and we will use that later. But first, we have to change our post form. We will add an event listener inside our post form that will capture the post ID we just selected on our post list. Unfortunately, the validation inside the hydrate function will always run every time we make changes to a class property in our post form. And in our example, we are changing a class property inside our post form as we are assigning our class variable model ID every time we emit the getModelID function, which is our event listener. To solve that, we will remove the validation inside the hydrate function and paste it inside our save function, so that it will only run every time the save function is called. We will echo out our model ID first to test it out. And in our else statement, which is the one that handles the update functionality, we will emit an event and pass in a parameter along with it, which is the selected item. As you can see, we can capture the selected ID from our parent component to our child component with just one code line. After that, we will make a query to our database for that specific post and pass in our model ID. We will then assign the values we get from the database to our class properties, the title and the content. Let's then add another if condition statement to our save function. The first condition is when the model ID exists, we will make an update procedure. And we will transfer our create procedure in the else statement like so. Now, let's see it in action. We can implement an update functionality using a modal on the front end, and PHP in the back end to handle most of the dirty stuff. As you can see, we can reuse the form for our update functionality by just merely passing in the selected post ID from a component to another component. Livewire makes it easier for us to implement this kind of stuff, and we didn't have to write lots of JavaScript to achieve this. We also need to set the model ID to null after saving so that when we made some post update, and we click the add button again, the variable model ID will be initialized back to null. By doing this, we will prevent logical runtime errors. Let's try another user. Well, I hope you have learned a simple but a practical approach in dealing with CRUD functionality using Laravel Livewire. I will be posting another bonus stuff later on that might be helpful with your Laravel projects. In the comments below, let me know what your thoughts, suggestions, or would you want to have another tutorial similar to these. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Please hit subscribe if you are new to this channel. And you can also get notified by clicking the notification bell whenever a new video is up. So stay tuned and see you in the next video.